Okay, guys, welcome. So I will record today's session and I hope that you can see it as soon as possible because we're going to have three assignments or maybe two. Yeah, two assignments in order to check comprehension of this topic. So here are the topics that we're going to work, and I just mentioned it before. And let's move on. So, as you know, I was saying that Edward Anthony was one of the first applied linguistic in which he could differentiate or distinguish among these concepts. So, number one, we have approach that, yes, is like a set of assumptions or the way in which we understand the nature of learning. Also, we have method over here that is like a step-by-step matter on how to teach second or foreign languages, but also it's like a plan, an overall plan that is really systematic and organized in how we can conduct this learning process. And finally, we have technique that is considered like a really specific classroom activity. I just want that you understand these really clear and simple concepts because I don't want to make really complicated terms just because it sounds better. No, just simple things. It will help you to understand these concepts. So remember that in the video we were working or reviewing these four aspects. Teaching a strategy is something new, but I will give you like a short and simple definition. So as you can see, teaching approach, this is like an example, constructivistic approach. Then the method could be like activity method. Activity is like a focus, very specific in the way the teacher present an activity. That's the method that it is here as an example. Later we have the teaching technique. You remember that it's the specific activity that we apply in the class. And here the example is dramatization and the role playing. And finally, the teaching strategy is think per circle and peer evaluation. So teacher, what is the difference between technique and strategy? Technique is something that the teacher plans, that the teacher departure to the students. And the strategy is more from the student, how the student will learn. It's more from the teacher, student center, the strategy, and the technique is more from the teacher center, okay? That's a little bit the difference between technique and strategy. And remember, everything should be closely related. Why? Because you need to be consistency in your practicum. There is no sense that you consider a class using a grammar translation method, but you are working in a oral discussion. So come on, trying to follow the same line of your approach. Later, this is another example of approach, method, and technique. Remember that the constructivism is the approach, how the learning may construct or create their learning. And at the end, we have the problem solving, that is the method. And finally, the group discussion, that is the specific activity that we can apply with this approach. Remember, these three aspects are closely related. Okay, so sure, we need to see how the language development has been done, or how what were the processes in order to have the new trends of method and approaches that we are aware of. You know, the communicative language teaching. How was the historical development to get this new trend? So yeah, we need to see a little bit more about the past. As I was saying that in our session, that Greek and Latin were those languages really important, and they were used as a lingua franca. Lingua franca is like the same speaking language that they used to communicate. So Greek and Latin were really common in that time. But what happened? The way in which they acquired the language were seen in two aspects. Number one, learners use the language, how learners use the language, or how the learners analyze the language. These are two ways in which they acquire the language, how the learning process of a language were done in that time. Also, in that time, the Renaissance, by this period, it was so important because there were a lot of production of books, and they were using two languages. I remember Latin and Greek, but Latin, it got a particular issue that in text they got a specific grammar that it was totally different when you want to express ideas orally. So the lingua franca, when it was developing in an oral and written form, were totally different because the grammar was like a big changes. So that's why with these new changes, there were many European countries in that time were called European vernacular, in which uh, there were many languages that people were practicing, and the people loved the idea of acquiring a new language. So that's why Amos Comenius developed some language techniques that from now on are still practicing in our context. And as I said before, this was so practiced a long time ago that right now we are just continue doing it in our classes. I need to admit it. I use some of these techniques in my classes. So here we have imitation instead of rules. Then we have repetition to practice reading and speaking. And finally, the use of pictures to make a meaningful learning. So thanks to Amos Comenius, we have this principle that we continue applying in our sessions. So guys, assignment number one. These are some very uh, very old trends from the past that were really important. I need to explain some of them, but very quickly. So number one, grammar translation method. As you know, the focus was on grammar, translating literally the ideas from one language to another, and that's the way in which people could learn a language. Also, we have the direct method in which the real purpose is to use the target language and omit or leave out the mother tongue. In that way, learning could have a better acquisition process, and that the target culture was really important. It was taught inductively the culture. Also, we have the reading approach, as the name it really said it, the reading, that the grammar was useful when we were reading a specific test. Also, we have the audiolingual approach, in which one of the bases of this approach is that the grammatical structure are sequence rules, that we need to follow a specific line of content, of grammar content, to acquire the language. And next one, we have the oral situational, that is pretty similar to the other lingua, but this was performed in Britain. So guys, I need that you read some of the principles of these approaches because you need to do the following task. I want that you send a voice note message in which you will present three principles. I don't care the approach, but I want three principles that are still relevant in our educational context. And also mention two principles that are not meaningful anymore. So send this voice note message to my WhatsApp. Yes, to my private WhatsApp, explaining the three principles that you think are important and two ones that are not important anymore. Okay, perfect. Okay, now it's my job to explain details, some recent approaches that yes, are still on into context that some teachers are using it in their daily life practicum. So let's start with the cognitive approach. I think it's a really good one because it is said that the learner is really the responsible of their own learning, pretty similar to the constructivism. But what happened here, the learner is also aware of how the language works. Then the grammar could be inductively or implicitly given. We can explain in detail how the grammar works, but also we can do the opposite, like presenting really important or really meaningful activities in which the learner will realize how the language works. Over here, it is said that the teacher needs an excellent or a good proficiency level in terms of English competences. I love the idea that errors are part of this approach. Yes, learners must commit some mistakes when acquiring a language. They need to make errors because in that way they realize what are the aspects they need to improve. And reading and writing are also in the same basis of speaking and listening. On the other hand, we have affective and humanistic approach. This is like giving the real importance to the student, like they are really human beings that they need attention. They need like they need to we need to provide like a nice language environment in which they can feel nice with the teacher, they can feel good with the all activity that we provide. So something like that to respect each individual, that the communication is really important, but in which we consider the person, the human being, as something meaningful, and it's really there is a lot of pair and group work. So I don't know if you remember that you got that teacher that you feel so great in the class, so you feel motivated to participate or be part of the class because you like the teacher, there is a rapport with that teacher. But what happened from the other side? There was that one that it was really boring, you hated so much, and that's why many of the topics or the activity that he provided or she provided in that time you didn't care about. So sure, that affective filter is really necessary to motivate, to encourage learners to be in our classes, okay? To be really, really connected to our classes. Then we have, let's start with the comprehension based. This one is well, I need to say something really personal that one of the greatest guy I've ever met in terms of linguistics or presenting new languages, uh, like presenting new theories in terms of language acquisition is Stephen Krashen. Krashen, he got many theories. Yes, I need to say theories that are not proof, but there are many, many believers or followers of his theories in which presented so great ideas. And one of them is that the way in which we acquire L1 could be the same as L2. Also, it is said that learners, they need to experience the silent period. I mean, they will be quiet in some time, but after giving a lot of meaningful input, they will start talking. That's one of the theories from Stephen Krashen. Error correction, the most important is that learners present the ideas, no matter the grammar mistakes or the vocabulary that are not appropriated. The most important is the learner can convey a message. Also, we have the learner exposed to meaningful input. I mean, like presenting activities, video, authentic material, giving all the input that they need, because in that way they will burst and they will start talking and present the language by itself, like a miracle. Present enough input that don't worry, later on the learner will give you the enough output of what you have given for a long time. And this is taken from the natural approach. And from the other side, we have the communicative. That's the one that all the schools in Colombia, or most of the schools are practicing. That the most important is the ability to communicate in the language, in the target language. We also have that the content that we present, the content like the topics, like the idea, the activities, should be based on the social and semantic aspect. It's all about cooperative work, pair work, cooperative, because we need to we need to present like a real social and democratic activity. Also, we present authentic and project task. The language skills are integrated. It means that we need to work the 5 skills. The teacher's role is just a facilitator, like helping to provide enough material that learners can feel good and at ease working with them. And the proficiency level is not really demanding, it's not challenging, but at least a B2 level can be considered. So please, it's really important that you watch this video, just the first 5 minutes, and I'm pretty sure that you will like it. Please watch this video because I think it's great. Stephen Krashen on language acquisition, only the first 5 minutes. And the assignment number two is that I really want to know something about your writing. There is a man called at the end of the reading material, Kumara Badivelu. I'm sorry if I didn't pronounce it quite well. He will talk about the post method era. So it's necessary, it's mandatory that you read the principles of this guy that it's just at the end of the reading material. Please read carefully this method. So these principles, you will read like only 10. So after reading, I need to know your opinion about them. And also these principles for you, which of these principles are important to apply in our educational context? And finally, which principle would you consider as a prospective teacher in the future? I mean, there is one that it is said that foster language awareness. It's like giving the chance of the students to think how the language works or how they are acquiring a language, how they are learning a language. The learner must be aware what are the things that you are doing with him, and then he can participate in a meaningful way. So please read the principles, and I want a free writing paragraph answering these questions. Okay, so send it to my email, and later I will give you the deadline for these two assignments. Okay, so bye bye. Thank you so much.